A very good day to our lovely grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's mathematical literacy lesson. My name is Mampani Kekana, and remember that this lesson is brought to you by the Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with the Cybole Discovery Center. Boys and girls, we are now in week number 6 of the term. Can you believe it? Time flies indeed. We are about halfway in the first term. So we are now in week number 6 of the term. That is about halfway in the term. So I hope so far so good, everything is going well. So today our focus will be on you, or you might have already discussed this with your educators, but our focus today will be on income, expenditure, cost price, selling price, profit and loss, as well as break-even analysis. Now, boys and girls, stay tuned. This is a very interesting, or one of the interesting subtopics in mathematical literacy. Now, of course, with any lesson, we need to know what is our desire in this lesson. What will be the outcomes? What do we need to know by the end of each and every lesson or each and every subtopic? So in this case, we're going to focus on identifying and perform calculations involving income, expenditure, profit, and loss values. We are also going to look at how to identify the costs associated with producing or manufacturing an item or rendering a service. We're also going to look at how to determine the cost of production and cost price of an item. We are also going to look at the break-even values, how to determine the break-even values by reading off or estimating values from the table. So, of course, very, very important in each and every section, terminologies are very important. But as we always say, you don't need to memorize any terminologies. You can use your own interpretation. You can use your own understanding in terms of definition. That will make your life much, much easier. Like, for instance, if they have to ask you to define an income, what are you going to say? You might have your own way of defining it, but just to give an idea, an income is the money received when selling goods or offering a business. Think about when you are running a business, and then an income, it's all the money that you're going to receive. So in this case, it's the money received when selling goods or offering a service. Expenditure. If the examiner has to ask you to define expenditure, what are you going to say? Just to give an idea, is payment for goods or services provided. If you pay for goods or services provided, that will be regarded as an expenditure. And then, of course, profit. Profit is when an income is bigger than expenses. In simple terms, we can just say when an income is bigger than expenses, that will be a profit. And then a loss, it's when expenses are bigger than income. You can just say in simple terms, loss or a loss in business, it's when expenses are bigger than income. And then, of course, budget, you might have your own interpretation, but just to give an idea, we say a list of expected income and expenditure. A list of expected income and expenditure. Then, of course, cost price. Cost price is the cost price, or we can say cost price. You can say it's how much the item cost. How much the item cost the business. How much the item cost the business. That will be the cost price. And then selling price is how much the business gets for the item. How much the business gets for the item. That will be the selling price. And then break-even point it refers to a point where a business is not making a profit or a loss. So in other words, if a business is not making a profit or is not making a loss, that will be regarded as a break-even point. And then, of course, under income expenditure, we have the following. We have income, and then under income, we've got what is called fixed income, we've got variable income, and we also have occasional income. Okay, as much as we have fixed income, variable income, and occasional income, we also have fixed expenditure. We also have variable expenditure, and we also have occasional expenditures. So you also need to have an idea of the meaning of these words. What do we mean by a fixed income? What do we mean by a variable income? What do we mean by an occasional income? And what do we mean by a fixed expenditure? What do we mean by a variable expenditure? And what do we mean by an occasional expenditure? In simple terms, when we say fixed income, it's an income that stays the same. So in other words, this person is receiving the same amount every month, or this person is receiving the same amount every day, every week, okay, or every fortnight. That will be regarded as fixed income. There's an example, it's a salary. In your case, it's going to be a pocket money. So whatever money that you receive every day, maybe they give you 50 rand or they give you 20 rand every day, that will be your fixed income. So it means that amount does not change. Even if it changes, it will change over or after a long time. So we regard it as a fixed income. And then a variable income is an income that changes on a regular basis. Income that changes on a regular basis. For an example, if someone is working on commission, that someone will not get the same income every month. So that will be regarded as a variable income. It varies. It means that is why we say it's a variable income. Occasional income is a once-off income. So occasional income, it's an income or that you receive once in a long time. Like in this case, we are talking about a bonus. You might get a gift, you might get a donation, or you might get a grant. So you only receive it once in a long time. Then together with the expenditures, if we say fixed expenditures, we are talking to expenses that stay the same on a monthly basis. So in other words, you know exactly that this is how much I'm going to use for this item, or this is how much I'm going to use for this service. So you're going to pay the same amount. For example, if you have to pay a rent, paying a rent, it means you are paying the same amount every time, paying the same amount. You know exactly that next month I'm going to pay this amount. The following month I'm going to pay this very same amount. Insurance, like car insurance, most of the people who are having car insurances, they will know that they are paying the same amount every month. Even if that amount has to change, there will be a notice in advance. But a notice maybe usually will come once in a year, but every month you'll pay the same amount throughout the year. And then variable expenditure, those are the expenses that changes, or those are the expenses that change every month. Like for instance, grocery. You don't actually buy the same items of grocery every month. So you spend a different amount. Bills, like electricity, we are not using the same amount of electricity every month, or the same amount of electricity every day, or every fortnight. So therefore, the cost of electricity will differ from month to month. Okay, then an occasional expenditure is once-off expenses. It is that type of an expense that you don't actually expect. It's once-off expenses, like for instance, a broken car. You'll never know when the car is going to get broken. You will never know when the geyser is going to burst in the house. Okay, so we say in this case it's an occasional expenditure. So a broken car, if a car breaks, then it simply means it will be an unexpected expense, or is an occasional expense. If a giza best, that is also an occasional expenditure, which is a once-off expenses. Okay, just to clarify what we have just discussed. Okay, they say in this case, expenses are classified into two types. Of course, expenses are classified into two types. Fixed, which is the expenses incurred at a fixed term. And then we also have variable, that depends on sales items. Then how do we calculate an income? If you want to calculate an income, you multiply the price of selling, in other words, the selling price of an item by the number of items sold. Let's say, for instance, you are running a business and you are selling sweets. If you want to calculate an income, what are you going to do? You take the price of one sweet, you multiply by the number of sweets. And then how do we calculate expenses? If we calculate expenses, we add fixed expenses, we add total fixed variable, and then we multiply the cost of buying an item by the number of items. If, for instance, you are selling sweets, obviously there's a cost there. It means you must go and buy a stock. How much does it cost you for one sweet? Then that will be a fixed expense. Now, in terms of expenses, you've got expenses equals to fixed expenses plus variable expenses. Fixed cost plus variable cost. We can say expenses equals to fixed expenses plus variable expenses, or we can say fixed cost plus variable cost. Then how do we calculate a profit? In calculating a profit or a deficit, okay, you subtract expenses from income. So in this case, you're going to say income subtract expenses, and then you're going to get a profit. If an income is bigger than expenses, that will be a profit. But if an income is smaller than expenses, then that will be a deficit. It means you'll be making a loss. Like in this case, if you are sticking to the very same formula where you start by saying income minus expenses, if you always start with income and then you subtract expenses, if you get a positive answer, then you must know that that is actually a profit. But if you get a negative answer, it's a deficit. It means it's a loss. So if the answer is negative in a case where you say income minus expenses, then that will be a deficit, or it will be a loss. Then these are some of the things that you need to take into consideration from the point of a business. We know that for a business to make money, it needs to sell goods. If you're running a business, in order to make money, you need to sell something. You need to sell some items, or you need to render a service. Okay? For a business to make money, it needs to sell goods or services for more than it costs. So it means you must, if the stock has costed you a certain amount, you need to sell more in order to overcome the cost. So the cost price is how much the item cost the business. The selling price is how much the business gets from or for the item. A business may offer the customer a discount on items. This means that the customer will pay less than the selling price for the items. These are some of the things that you need to think about, especially when you are running a business. The profit a company makes is determined by difference between selling and cost price. Difference between selling and cost price. So it simply means is the difference between the two. We say the selling price minus the cost price. If the selling price is less than the cost price, can you imagine if the selling price, if you buy sweets, if you buy a stock and you buy one sweet for 20 cents, and then but you sell it for 15 cents. So what is going to happen there? It means you're not going to make any profit. Okay? Then you must also be able to use this formula. It's percentage profit is a percentage calculated which compares the relationship between profit and cost price. And then the formula is percentage profit equals to profit over cost price multiplied by 100%. Okay, you don't actually need to memorize this. The examiner might give it to you. Profit margin is a means of comparing business performance over different time intervals, over different time periods. Profit margin is a means of comparing business performance. So in other words, if you want to check if your business is doing well over time, you might need to check this maybe after 6 months. You want to check for the past 6 months, how did my business perform? Was it doing well? Was it doing bad? So in that case, you're going to use a profit margin where you're going to say profit over income multiplied by 100. Then again, we know about break-even point refers to a point where expenses and income of a business are equal, a point where income and expenses graph meet. Calculating break-even point. In a break-even point, it means if you take an income and you subtract expenses, you will always get zero. Income minus expenses, you will always get zero. No profit, no loss. Graphically, the break-even point can be analyzed as follows. Okay, this is a picture of a break-even analysis. So if you look at this graph, okay, you will see that we've got, if you look at this grid, you will see that we've got a graph of income. We've got a graph of income, which is this one, and we've got a graph of expenses. If you look at this point, you can see that expenses are on top and then income is at the bottom. So expenses are bigger than an income. So it means even here, the income or the expenses are on top, or the graph of the expenses, it's on top. And then the graph of the income is at the bottom. So it means this person, or what is happening here is there's no profit. Up until you get to this point, at this point, you can see that the income and the expenses are the same. That is what we call a break-even point. There's no profit there, there's no loss. But after that, what is happening? You can see that now the graph of income, total sales, it's now above the graph of expenses. So anywhere in this area, if I look at this point, I can see that income is bigger than expenses, or income is above expenses. So therefore, in this case, the business would make a profit. Even if I choose this point, I can see that the point of income is above the point of expenses. So it means the business is making a profit there. Okay, now that was just an introduction, or that was just an overview of the concepts that we are working with, the concept of income, expenditure, selling price, cost price, profit or loss, as well as break-even analysis. That was just an introduction or just an overview. But we're now going to look at typical exam questions. These are the questions that were taken from various question papers. So now you just have to imagine yourself if you were in grade 12, maybe at that particular year of that question paper, would you be able to answer these questions? That is what is important here. Now, with this question, it's the Lighthouse Foundation provides food parcels, uniforms, and clothing to needy children in Limpopo. Each year, the Lighthouse Foundation presents a financial report from 1st April 2020 to 31st March 2021 to all its stakeholders. Use the information in the table to answer the following questions. So the table is given, so we have to use any information that is given there to answer these questions. 1.1, write down the period of time covered by the financial report. Okay, write down the period of time covered by the financial report. So in this case, we have to use the information as well as the table. So the information that is provided, we can see that the period is actually not indicated in the statement there. but it's indicated that it's from the 1st of April 2020 to 31st of March 2021. They say write down the period from the 1st of April 2020 or from the 1st of April to the 31st of March. It's exactly 12 months. So this one we can say it's 12 months, or one can say it's about 1 year. That would be the period. The period is 12 months, or you can just say it's 1 year. Okay, the next question from the very same source, it's name the Lighthouse Foundation's main source of income. Name the Lighthouse Foundation's main source of income. So if we look at our statement, there we've got incomes, okay, we've got private donations. So in this case, private donations were local, 78,240, and then overseas, 57,120, and then there was also a subsidy from local municipality, which was 308,160. The question is the main source. So the main source obviously will be the local municipality. So these people are actually depending, they are depending more on the local municipality. So the local municipality will be their main source. So in this case, we just write local municipality. Okay, local municipality, as easy as that. Okay, then the next question is express the subsidy from the local municipality. Express the subsidy from the local municipality as a percentage of the total income. So now we have to go and check. We know that the subsidy from the local municipality is 308,000. So we've got 308,000 rand, 160 rand. Then they say we must express it as a percentage of the total income. So for us to get a percentage, we must get a fraction first. Okay, so it's 443. So 443,520. There we've got a fraction. Now we want to write it as a percentage. Then we just multiply by 100%. Then after multiplying by 100%, so please make use of your calculator. Let's see if we're gonna get exactly the same answer. So if I take my calculator, I say 308,160 divided by 443,520. Okay, and then I take that value, I multiply it by 100. I'm getting 69,48. So please check your answer as well. It must be 69,4805 and so on and so on. The examiner, does the examiner specify the rounding? Yes, very important. Round off the answer to 1 decimal place. For us to round off to 1 decimal place, we've got 69, so if you want to keep 1 digit after the comma, we've got the first digit there as 4. Is this going to remain as 4 or is it going to change to 5? If the digit next to it is 5 or more, okay, this will change to 5. But if the digit next to it was less than 5, this was going to remain the same. So in this case, therefore, our answer is 69,5. Okay, 69,5, and then we indicate the percentage sign there. Okay, still the very same question is calculate the average cost of one school uniform if 48 children received school uniform. Average cost. Now the average cost, it means now we must take the total cost and then we divide it by the number of learners. We take the total cost, we divide it by the number of learners. But in this case, we take the cost of uniform, okay, of school uniform. So calculate the average cost of one school uniform. How many school uniforms do we have here? We've got 48. How many school uniforms is for 48 children? So it means we've got 48 sets. But now when we check in our table, we can see that school uniform cost about 10,047 rand. 10,047 10,047 rand. So I take 10,047 rand, 10,047 rand, and I divide it by 48. There it is. Then using my calculator, please also use your calculator, 10,047, and then we divide it by 48, and then I'm getting 209,3125. So this is what I'm getting on my calculator. Okay, 10,047 divided by 48, I'm getting 209,3125. Okay, your teacher might have told you that the value of money, even if they don't specify, should be rounded up to 2 decimal places. So this is 209, comma. If we round it up to 2 decimal places, we check. We must keep 2 digits after the comma. So here we've got 31. Is it going to remain as 31 or is it going to change to 32? If the digit next to it is more than 5, then it will change to 32. But the digit next to it is less than 5. So therefore, this will remain as 31. Then we get 209 rand and 31 cents. That is how we're supposed to calculate this number 1.4. Okay, then the next question with regard to income and expenses. The graph showing the income and expenses of Tembi's toy making business is given below. Use the graph to answer the following questions. 2.1. So we have to use this graph to answer the question. What is Tembi's income if she sells 30 toys? Now, from these graphs, we need to know which one is for income and which one is for expenses. So, of course, they are clearly labeled that this one is for income and this one is for expenses. So it means in this case, boys and girls, you must be able to interpret the information that is given on the graph, on the drawn graph. Okay, now Tembi's income. We want to know Tembi's income if she sells 30 toys. This is the number of toys and this is the amount. This amount can either be for income or it can either be for expenses. Now for 30, here is 30. Now from this 30, we need to know if the number of toys is 30, then we want to know if we go up, when we get to this point is for expenses. So we can't read it there. Okay, we have to go up. We have to go up until we touch the graph of the income. Now at this point, we check. At this point, that is where we need to check how much is this? How much is this? This is between 700 and 800 rand. Between 700 and 800 rand. But the examiner would not want you to guess. The examiner would expect you to give an accurate answer. Even if it's not accurate in a case of where you are estimating, but your answer must be very close. So in this case, we can see that it's between 700 and 800. What is the number between 700 and 800? So exactly between 700 and 800 is 750. Okay. Now, in terms of the graphs, it means you must know how to interpret the blocks. You must be able to know how to interpret the blocks or how to interpret the lines. Because you can see that between 700 and 800, there are 2 rows. There are 2 rows there. Then we can say 800 minus 700 will give you 100. Then we divide it by 2. Then we know that each line will be 100 divided by 2, which is 50. So from 700, I go to 750. And then from 750, I go to 800. So in this case, it's going to be exactly 750. So the income is 30, then that will be 750. Okay, the next question is, will Tembi make a profit or a loss if she only makes 5 toys and sells all of them? Will Tembi make a profit or a loss if she only makes 5 toys? Now, if we go to 5 toys, we need to check. 5 toys, what is the income there? How much is the income? And how much is the expenses? Okay. If the income is bigger than expenses, so it means term B would make a profit. But if the income is smaller than expenses, term B would make a loss. So if I go to the graph, I check, I go up, and then when I get to this point, I can see that this is the graph of income. This is the graph of income. How much is this? So if I have to estimate, I will say, okay, this is 100, and this is obviously 150. Between 100 is 150. But this one, at this point, it's not exactly between 100 and 200. It's between 100 and 150. Okay, now you check. Think about this. What is the value that is between 100 and 150? What is the value that is between 100 and 150? If you want to get that value, you can just say on your calculator, 100 plus 150 is going to give you 250. Then you divide it by 2. Then you get 125. So it means the amount here is 125. Income, this is the graph of income. The income is 125 rate. Okay, now let's check the expenses. The expenses are between 150 and 200. What is this value there? What is the value? The value is between 150 and 200. If you want to know the value that is exactly between 150 and 200, what do? Say 150 plus 200. Press the equal sign. Remember, those who are using a Casio, then you divide it by 2. Then I'm getting 175. So it means at this point, it's 175. Expenses are 175. If I have to calculate, if I take income, I take 125, then I subtract 175. Okay, 125 minus 175. So if you take your calculator, 125 minus 175, then you get negative 50. So this is negative 50, so it means it's negative 50 rand. So what did we say when, what did we say when, or what did we say about subtracting expenses from income? If you say income minus expenses and then you get a positive answer, it means that is a profit. But if you say income minus expenses and then you get a negative answer, that is a loss. So in this case, the question says, will Tembi make a profit or a loss if she only makes 5 toys and sells all of them? So Tembi is going to make a loss. It's going to make a loss. Okay. So in this case, the question was not clear whether we have to show the calculations one, but you can see that in terms of calculations, it's a loss. But some learners might look at the graph like the way I explained it before. If you look at this point, you can see that the graph of expenses, it's above the graph of the income. So it means anywhere here where the graph of expenses is above the graph of income, that is where a loss is. And then if you look at this part, you will see all this part from this point going to the right hand side. You can see that the graph of income, it's now above the graph of expenses. So if the graph of income is above the graph of expenses, it simply means that is where a profit is. It means a profit. So some of you might have read the graphs in that way instead of doing the calculations. You just look at the graphs, which one is above, which one is below. If income is above and then the expenses is below, then that is a profit. But in the case of where expenses is above and the income is below, that is a loss. Okay, then we say how many toys must Tembi make and sell to break even? Now to break even, it simply means that is where the income and expenses are equal. Expenses and income are equal. So if we look at this, we can see that that must be a break even. Break even, that is where the graphs are meeting. That is where the graphs are intersecting, at the intersection of the two graphs. So here is our intersection. What is the point there? If you look at this, we say a 10 This is between 200 and 300, so it means it's 250. So income is 250 there. Expenses is also 250. So both of them are equal. If both income and expenses are equal, if both income and expenses are the same, it simply means that is a break even. So for term B to break even, to sell or to sell, in order to break even, term B must sell about 10 twice. 10 twice will give him the same, will give him or will give her the same amount for income and also expenses. Okay, then the next question is, Mr. Stanford owns a company that sells healthcare products. The company pays 50 Rand per item plus 3,000 Rand for shipping and packaging. Okay, remember, in some cases, if you are running a business, the cost is not only for buying a stock. Okay, sometimes some of you have to take a transport. You have to take a taxi to go and buy a stock. That will be another expense. It's the expense of transportation and also the expense of buying. So like in this case, it's 50 Rand per item, but they also have to be shipped and packaged. They sell the item at 120 Rand each. The graph alongside shows the company's cost and income according to the number of items sold. 3.1. Use the graph above to determine the exact number of items sold. That will give a loss of 1,400. Use the graph. Okay? Use the graph above to determine the exact number of items sold. That will give a loss of 1,400. Now, if I look at my graph, I've got, or if I look at my graphs, I've got a graph of income, which is this one from this point to that point. And then I also have a graph of cost or expenses. Cost and expenses, same thing. Now, what did I say about one graph being above another one? What did I say about a graph or one graph being above another one? I said if a graph of income is above the graph of expenses, that will be a profit. But if a graph of income is below a graph of cost, that will be a loss. So where's our loss here? So this whole part will be a loss. So our loss is somewhere there. It's only after this point where you can see that the graph of income is above the graph of the cost. So there's a profit. So for 1,400, our forecast must be there. Okay. So in this case, I tried to make it easier. Instead of doing the calculations, you just check the difference. If I look at the difference, that will give me 1,400. So we can see that from this point to that point, I've got 2,000. What does each block represent? What does each line represent there? From 0 to 2,000, how many blocks are there? I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I've got 2,000 and then I've got 10 blocks. So I say 2,000 divided by 10. So 2,000 divided by 10 will give me 200. So it means each block is 200. So this will be 200, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, 1,200, 1,400, 1,600, 1,800, and then 2,000. Okay. But in this case, they say use the graph above to determine the exact number of items. So that will give a loss of 1,500. A loss here, it's the difference of these 2 points. Okay. If I look at, for instance, these 2 points, this point here, it's 4,000. So it means the expenses, because this is the graph of expenses, the expenses are 4,000. Then if I look at the very same point, this one, how much is this? So this one I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So I've got 1,200. I've got 1,200. So if I say 4,000 minus 1,200. Remember, I said this line here, it's on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if it's 6, it means it's 1,200. And this one is at 4,000. So this point is 1,200, and this one is 4,000. So look at this. If you take your calculator, you say 4,000. Okay, take your calculator, you say 4,000, this point, minus 1,200. Okay, 4,000 minus 1,200. I'm getting 2,800. So this one, it's 4,000 minus 1,200. Then I get 2,800. So it means in this case, because if I take expenses, I subtract, or let me do it in this way. Let me say income minus expenses. So because we know that our income in this case is 1,200. Okay, and then it's minus 4,000, and it gives me negative 2,800. Now this negative 2,800 is just an indication that this is actually a loss. It's not a profit. It's 2,800. Okay, but look at this. If you count the number of blocks, if I start counting from this one, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. From this point to that point, if I count the blocks going up, I get 14. But remember, each block is what? Is 200. So if I say 14 multiplied by 200, 14 multiplied by, I get 2,800. So the number of blocks between these 2 points will actually give me the amount. The number of blocks between this point and this point will give me 2,800. Will give me 14 blocks, and in the 14 blocks, it's 2,800. But now, this one is 1,400. The 1,400, it means it must be how many blocks? It must be 7 blocks. It must be 7 blocks. So where am I going to find 7 blocks between any 2 points? Either this ones, or this one. These ones I can see that they are not giving me 1,400, but they are giving me 2,800. If I check this one, I count, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this one is 10. It means the difference there is 2,000. If I go to the next one, I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I get 1,800. If I go to this one, I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 blocks. 7 blocks will give me 1,400. So 7 blocks will give me 1,400. So it is here where I'm going to get 1,400. Use the graph to determine the exact number of items. The exact number of items will be from this point. That will be between 20 and 40. Between 20 and 40. What is the halfway of 20 and 40? The halfway of 20 and 40 is 30. It's 30. Or some of you might say, okay, at this point at 30, what is the income? The income here is, okay, the income is, at this point, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the income, the income is 8 multiplied by 200, which is 1,600. That is the income. Okay, but now the expenses will be how much? At this point, I've got okay, this one is at 30, so this one I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this will give me exactly 5,000. So it's 5,000. So if I take 5,000 4,000 minus 1,600. That is the other way that we can find the answer. But in this case, this will give me 1,000. I mean, this will be 30 items. So exactly 30 items will give you a loss of 1,400. Okay, then the next one is 3.2. Mr. Stanford stated that the company would break even if 40 items were sold at 137 Rand and 50 cents each. Verify whether Mr. Stanford's statement is correct or not. Show all the necessary calculations. Break even, what does that mean? Break even means the income and cost will be equal. The amount of the income and the amount of the cost will be equal. Okay, now let us look at this. What is our income at 40 items? So here we've got 40 items. So the income here will be at this point. This is our income. This is our income. So now we need to check where is our income. Okay, or we can use the calculations. We say 40 items, what will be the cost? The cost will be 50 Rand multiplied by 40, and then we say plus 3,500. Okay, so now they say the company pays 50 Rand per item plus 3,500. So now we want to calculate the cost. The cost will be, if I take 50, I multiply by 40, I get 2,000. So this will give me 2,000 plus 3,500. Okay, so 3,500, and in the end I get 5,500. Sorry, 5,500. There's 5,500, which is the cost. And then what about the income? Income is, I take 120 Rand multiplied by 40. Okay, so 120 Rand multiplied by 40. If I take my calculator, 120 multiplied by 40, and then I get 4,800. Okay, so it's 120 multiplied by 40, it's 4,800. No, I made a mistake there. Sorry, I must take. They say the company pays 50 Rand per item plus 3,500 for shipping and packaging. They sell the item for 120 Rand each. Okay, so Mr. Stanford stated the company would break even 40 items were sold at 137 Rand and 50 cents. So this one I must take 137 Rand and 50 cents. We multiply by 40. So it must give me exactly 5,500. So this one I don't use for 120. I must use 137 Rand and 50 cents. So 137 Rand and 50 cents multiplied by 40, it's equals to 5,500. Okay, so now I can see that in this case, the cost is 5,500 and then the income is 5,500. So they say verify whether Mr. Stanford's statement is correct or not. Show all the necessary calculation. We calculated the cost. We took the price of one item, we multiplied by 40 Rand. And we also added the fixed price. Okay, we added the fixed price, which is 3,500. Then we got 5,500. And then we took the selling price, which is 137 Rand 50 multiplied by 40, we got 5,500. And then we can see that the income and the cost are equal. So therefore we can say Mr. Stanford statement is correct. Mr. Stanford statement is correct. Right, then the next typical exam question is Morne has a business on the side where he makes charcuterie boards out of special wood. He purchases sheets of the special wood and cut them to size and finishes the wood off with a special oil. He sells these charcuterie boards at different markets across the country for 450 Rand each. Use table and information above to answer the question that follow. Determine the cost of one charcuterie board. Okay, determine the cost of one charcuterie board. So in this case, we have to determine the cost of one board. Okay, now let's look at our table. Our table says the number of charcuterie boards, and then the income is 0, and then expenses. So for this one, we've got 5. The income is 2,250. Then the expenses are 3,375. But now we need to calculate the cost. We don't calculate the income or the selling price. We calculate the cost price. In order to calculate the cost price, it means we must use expenses. But you can see that for this one, even if you don't have any number of charcuterie boards, you have a fixed expense of 2,500. 2,500. But if you've got 5 of them, they cost you 3,375. Can you see that in this case, we actually have a fixed cost? A fixed cost. Whether you've got that number of boards or not, we've got 2,500. So it means now in this 3,750, the 3,000, we've got 3,375. 3,375. We need to subtract that fixed expense. So we take 3,375, we subtract 2,500. Then we get 3,375 minus 2,500. Then I get 875. So this is 875 Rand. But this 875 Rand, it is the cost of only 5 boards. Okay, it is the cost of 5 boards. Then what we do, we say the cost of one board. Cost of one board will be how much? Cost of one board will be 875 Rand divided by 5. If I take 875 Rand, I divide it by 5, then I get 175 Rand. Okay, so the cost of one board is 175 Rand. Then we go to the next question, that is number 4.2 in the very same table. They say calculate the values of A and B. Calculate the values of A and B. Here we've got A and here we've got B. So now in order to find the value of A, it means we must use the selling price. We must use a selling price. If we go back to our information, they say he sells these boards at different markets across the country for 450 Rand. We can just verify with this. How did they get 2,250? How did they get 2,250? If you take 5, you multiply by 450, then you get 2,250. So it means to find the value of A, we must take 15 and multiply by 450. So if we take 15, we multiply by 450, then I get 6,750. So in other words, for the value of A, it's 450 Rand multiplied by 15. Then this gives me 6,750. This gives me 6,750. Then the next one is the value of B. We need to check now. How do we get the value of B? Or how did they get the value of 2,500? How did they get the value of 3,375? And how did they get the value of 5,150? Now remember, to find the value of B, it must be expenses. Remember the formula for expenses is fixed plus variable. Fixed expenses plus variable expenses. Fixed expenses, it is those expenses that remain the same. It doesn't matter how many items you buy or how many items you sell. So in this case, we can see that for the number of boards, if the number of boards is 0, the expenses are 2,500. Okay, so it means this 2,500, it might be for rental. Remember, if you're owning a business, you have to rent a store. So whether you're going to sell, whether you're going to buy or you're not going to sell anything, you still have to pay the rent. So in this case, the 2,500 will always be there. So our expenses in this case, it must be 2,500. So 2,500 plus, okay, 2,500. Then for this one, for 2,500, then we say variable. What is the cost of one board? How much does one board cost us? We have already calculated that in the previous question. Remember that 175 rand. The 175 rand, then now we say 175 rand multiplied by 25. So we multiply by 25 equals to, if you take 2,500, okay, let me start by saying 175 multiplied by 25. Then I add 2,500 plus 2,500. And this will give me 6,875. Okay, 6,875. You can just check it with other items. For this one, if it's 5, we say 2,500 plus 175 times 5. So if you say 175 times 5, 175 times 5 plus 2,500, it's going to give me exactly 3,375. 3,375. So that is how we calculate the value of B. The value of B actually represents the expenses, and this is how we calculate the expenses. Right, then for number 4.3, it says write a formula to determine the expense for the calculatory boards. Write a formula to determine the expense for the calculatory boards. So what do we do? What is the formula? It's a similar formula that I used in the previous question. Remember this? Where I said expenses equals to fixed plus variable. So I will just rewrite this. Expenses equals to fixed expenses plus variable expenses. Okay, this one we know. Then what is our fixed expenses in this case? Our fixed expenses is 2,500 plus. How do we get variable expenses? For the variable expenses, we take 175 rand, we multiply by number of boards. Okay, you can just say number of that calculatory boards. So in this case is 2,500 plus 175 rand multiplied by the number of boards, and this will be the formula. Okay, then number 4.4 is determine how many calculatory boards need to be sold before Morne shows a profit. Okay, determine how many calculatory boards need to be sold before Morne shows a profit. Show all calculations. Now, boys and girls, remember we said if expenses are always bigger than income, that is a loss. Let us look at this. If we look at this point, where the number of boards is 0 and then income is 0 and expenses. You can see that for this one, expenses are bigger than an income. So therefore it's a loss. 3,375 is bigger than 2,250. Okay, 3,375 is bigger than 2,250. So it means this one, it's also a loss. Okay, then we go to this one. This one we have already calculated the value of A. If I can just take you back to the value of A that we calculated. We calculated the value of A at 6,750. 6,750. So this one is 6,750. Okay. Now, if it's 6,750, you can see that this one, 5,125, it's smaller than 6,750. So at 15 items, Mornay made a profit. Okay, Mornay made a profit there. So, but the question is, determine how many territory boards needs to be sold before Mornay shows a profit. In other words, the number of boards where the income and expenses are equal. Okay, we can test it like this. So for this one, it must be, obviously, it must be more than 5, but less than 15. So I'm just going to check. You can check with the others, but in this case, we can say, let's check with 8. If the number of items are 8, okay, for 8 boards, what will be our income? Income will be 8 multiplied by, what is our selling price? 450. So this will give us 8 times 450, then I get 3,600. Then expenses. If I check expenses using 8 boards, the expenses will be 2,500 plus 8 multiplied by, what is the cost price? The cost price was 175. So this will give us 8 times 175 plus 2,500. Then I'm getting 3,900. So in this case, you can see that the income and expenses are still not equal. Okay. So expenses are bigger than the income. So that one is a loss. It's not a break even. So what if I go to 9 items? So this one I'm going to do it like this. What about 9 boards? If I use 9 boards, and then income will be 9 multiplied by 450. Then it's 4,050. Okay. And then what will be my expenses? Okay, let me just show this one that I said 450 multiplied by 9, and then it gave me 4,050. Okay, and then what about expenses? Expenses, it means I must say 2,500 plus 175 multiplied by 9. So if you use your calculator, 175 multiplied by 9, and then I add 2,500. Then I'm, okay, let me do it. 175 multiplied by 9 plus 2,500. I'm getting 4,075. So 4,075, still no break even. But now if I take 10, let's say income equals to 450 multiplied by 10, I'm getting 4,500. But if I take the very same amount, now I calculate the expenses, I say 2,500 plus 175 times 10. Then I get 175 multiplied by 10, I get 1,750. and then I add 2,500, then I'm getting 4,250. So that one still no, they are not equal. Then if I take 11, I get 4,950 for the income, and then the expenses 175. Okay, I get 4,425. So in this case, I say 4,500 is 4,250. Now you can see that this is actually a very, very long method. So this is actually a very, very long method. So the easiest method that you can use in this case is now to solve the two formulas. Remember, if you've got an income which is 450, so income equals to 450 multiplied by n, okay? And then we've got expenses equals to 2,500 plus 175 times n. Okay, now we want these two items to be equal. Okay, we want these two items to be equal. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to say 450 n equals to 2,500 plus 175 n. Okay, 450 n equals to 2,500 plus 175. And then I take 175 to the other side. I say 450 n minus 175 n equals to 2,500. Okay, then if I take 450 and minus 175, then I get 275. So this will give me 275, and then n equals to 2,500. Okay, then I say 2,500 divided by 275. Then I'm getting about 9. So n in this case is, okay, I divide both sides by 275. I divide this one by 275. I'm getting n equals to 9.09, which is about 9. Okay, so 9 is actually the one that gave us a very close answer there. But in order to get a clear picture, a good picture in terms of the number of items, we had to solve this one algebraically. So that is where you take the two equations and then you make them to be equals to each other. Okay, then the next question is name two possible factors that influence fixed cost in this context. Name two possible factors that influence fixed cost. So remember, our fixed cost is 2,500. It cost Mornay 175 rand for one board. 175 rand for one board. Okay, but what are the other expenses? The other expenses can be for rent or for fuel, and so on. You can think of any other expenses of running a business. So in this case, the possible answers will be rent and fuel. Okay, then the next question is, on the 10th of September 2023, the Zulu Nation had an annual reed dance, which was held at Kwanongoma in KwaZulu-Natal. On the day, Mandla decided to conduct his business of selling bead necklaces. It cost him 15 rand to make one bead necklace. He calculated the daily fixed cost was 100 rand, and he would be able to sell 100 bead necklaces per day. He will sell each bead necklace at 24 rand. Use the table and the information above to answer the questions that follow. Determine the value of A in the table. What is the value of A, or what does A represent? let us read this one. It cost him 15 rand. Okay, so in order to calculate income, we must take the selling price. So in this case, he will sell each bead necklace at 24 rand. So the selling price is 24 rand. So we take the value of A is 24 rand multiplied by 40. 24 rand multiplied by 40. So it's 24 multiplied by 40. It's 960 rand. Okay. So it's 960 rand. You can just verify with other values. Like in this one is 30. If you take 30, you multiply by 24, and then indeed we get 720. And that is how we're supposed to get the value of A. Okay, then 5.1.2, write down an equation that can be used to calculate the income. We have already calculated the income. So the method that we use to calculate an income, in this case, it means income, it's what is that, 24 rand. So we just say 24 multiplied by number of necklaces. Okay. Income equals to 24 rand multiplied by number of necklaces or number of bead necklaces. Then 5.1.3, it says identify the independent variable. Now, independent variable, and we've got dependent variable. Dependent variable, it means that variable depend on something. In order to calculate that amount, we're gonna need something, or we're gonna need another value. Okay, so independent, it means it does not depend on the other value. For us, in this case, think about this. In order to calculate an income, there's no way that we can calculate an income if we don't know the number of necklaces. We need to know the number of necklaces in order to calculate an income. So therefore, income is a dependent because it depends on the number of necklaces. Okay, and the number of necklaces will be an independent. So identify an independent, and independent will be number of bead necklaces. Okay, number of bead necklaces is an independent variable in this case. Okay, then still on the very same question, it's calculate the value of B in the table. Now this one is a different story. Calculate the number of, calculate the value of B in the table above. Here we are looking for the value of B. Okay, number of bits, whether you've got the number of bits or not, it will cost you 100 rand. Okay, so it means this one is a fixed cost. All right, this will be a fixed cost. Now the formula is given. Let's say Manda uses this. So what we are going to do in this case, in order to find the value of B, we say cost is 250. So we say 250, it's equals to, okay, let's just forget about the units for now. So it's 100 plus 15 multiplied by n. Okay, so it's 250 equals to 100 multiplied, equals to 100 plus 15n. Then now we have to find the value of n. The same way we solve, the similar way we solve the other one. So it's 250 minus 100 equals to 15 times n. And then 250 minus 100, we get 150. So it's 150 equals to 15n, or 15 times n. So in order to get the value of n, we divide by 15, then therefore we've got 10 equals to n. 15 and 15 will cancel out. 150 divided by 15 is 10. So that is why I've got 10 equals to n. So therefore the value of B, is 10. Okay, so that is the question. And then for 5.2.2, it's The graph on answer sheet 1 shows the total income for selling up to 100 beads necklaces. Use the information in the table to draw another graph representing the cost from the selling of up to 100 beads. So we are given a grid. Now on this grid, a graph has already been drawn. And this is a graph of an income. So we have to use this information to draw the graph of cost prices. Okay, the information is given. We've got 0 and 100. We didn't know what the value of B was, but we calculated the value of B. So we found the value of B to be 10. So we now know the value of B. The value of B is 10. Then we can just plot all these points and then join them by means of a straight line. The first one is 0 and 100. Okay, we need to plot 0 and 100. Very important. So you must also be able to interpret the blocks or the lines that are given on a grid paper. Okay, or the lines or the blocks that are given on a grid. In this case, it's on a grid. Where do I find 0 and 100? If you look at this, I've got 0 here and then I've got 200. 100 is not indicated there, but I know that 100 must be the halfway of 0 and 200. So that one, I'm going to plot it there. Okay, 0 and 200. The next point is 10 and 250. 10 is not indicated, but 10 is here, and then I must find 250. Okay, now on this one, I don't have 250, but I can see I've got 200 and 400. And then I know that exactly between 200 and 400, that is where I find 300. So there's 300. So now if I want to estimate my 250, I'll say 250 is between 200 and 300. So it means my next point, I'm going to plot it here. It's 10 and 250. Okay, I'm estimating. The next one is 30. Now I can go to 30. 30 is between 20 and 40. So there is 30. But 30 goes with what? With 550. Where is 550 here? I don't have 550, but I can estimate it. Between 400 and 600, I've got 500. Okay, now 550, obviously, it's going to be between 500. If this is 500, just above, that is where I'm going to find. So I can plot it here. I'm just estimating it. Just go in there. Okay, so this will be my 30 and 550. The next point is 55 and 925. Okay, but you can see that already these are going to give me a straight line. So you can go to 80 and 1,800. I've got 80 and 1,300. So if I've got 80 here, then I go up somewhere I must find 1,300. Where am I going to find 1,300? I've got 1,200, I've got 1,400. Exactly between 1,200 and 1,300, that is where I'm going to find, between 1,200 and 1,400, that is where I'm going to find 1,300. So I can estimate the 1,380 to be there. The last point is 100 and 1,600. There's my 100 and 1,600 is clearly indicated. So the point will be there. So from this point, if I just join by means of straight line, there it's a hand-free line. So if you use a ruler, it must be an accurate straight line. But you can see that all these 3 points are on the same straight line. But that is how you complete. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points plotted, and then we joined them by means of a straight line. Okay, the next question is Brand owns a store in his town that sells cricket and rugby equipment. The table alongside shows some of the equipment in Brand's store with cost price and selling price for each product as well as the number he sold. Use the table to answer the following questions. 6.1, rearrange the cost price of all the equipment in ascending order. Ascending order, it means ascending for up. So it means it must be from the lowest to the highest. For what? For the cost prices. So these are the cost prices. So I must move from the lowest to the highest. Now I have to check which one is the smallest value. 155. Okay, so we can check. Just because we said 155, we can remove it. After 155, I've got 600. Okay, I've got 600, can be any 600. There's another 600. Okay, then the 600 are gone. Then the next one, I've got 1,250. 1,250. After 1,250, I've got 1,750. After 1,750, I've got 2,450. So you just need to count. Initially, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it means all of them are there and they are now arranged in ascending order. Right, write down as a simplified ratio the cost price of A6 rugby boots to the cost price of S&S Prestige betting pad. Okay, so this one I have to take the price, cost price of the A6 and the cost price of the S&S. Sorry. So if I go to my table, I look for the cost price. The cost price of A6 is 1,250. 1,250, and then there's the symbol for ratio, and then I have to take S&S Prestige betting pad. So S&S, so it's 600. Okay, so now if I simplify this, I can just say 1,250 over 600, then I get 25 is to 12. So in other words, what I do is I take 600, I divide it by 50. 600 divided by 50, and then 1,250 divided by 50. So I divided by 50, divided by 50, then that is how I've got 25 is to 12. Or on your calculator, you can just do it by in the form of a fraction where you say 1,250 over 600. If you're using a Casio, then that will give you 25 over 12. Then you rewrite it in the form of a ratio. Okay, then 6.3. So it's one customer bought 6 medalist rugby balls at brand store. Determine the profit brand made on this sale of the medalist rugby balls. So 6 medalist rugby balls were bought. So we have to go and look at how do we calculate a profit. So a profit, we must take income and subtract expenses. Income minus expenses. So, but now we must first calculate an income. Income will be, in this case, income of the medalist rugby balls. So medalist rugby balls, its income will be 248 multiplied by 6. So if I take my calculator, 248 multiplied by 6, then I get 1,488. Right? And then for expenses, I'll take the cost price. The cost price is 155. 155 multiplied by 6. So if I take 155, I multiply by 6, then I get 930. So 930, so therefore the profit in this case is 1,488 minus minus 930. Okay, so 1488 minus 930, 1488 minus 930 rand, and then I get 558. 558 rand. So that is the answer for number 6.3. Right, then number 6.4, it's a brand claims that he will make more than 55% profit on the BAS King Hitler cricket bet. Verify by showing all calculations if his claim is valid. Okay. So now in this case, we'll make more than 55% profit. So we need to calculate the profit in this one. So the profit for BAS. So the BAS profit, again, from the cost price, we get 2,765 rand minus 1,750, and then it's equals to, so 2,765 minus 1,750, it's 1,015 rand. This is the profit. And the profit is from where? It's from cost price. So we take 1,015 rand, we divide it by 1,750, we multiply by 100%, or you just multiply by 100, divide by 1750. Then I'm getting 58. So it's 58%. Let's check our question. Brand claims that he will make more than 55% profit. Verify by showing all calculations if his claim is valid. So in this case, it's 58%. Therefore, his claim is valid. His claim is valid. Why is it valid? Because you can see that 55% is, 58% is more than 55%. Of course, he said it will be more than 55%. And indeed, after doing our calculations, we can see that it's more than 55%. Then number 6.5, it's calculate the missing value S. So if brand makes 60% profit on all his rugby equipment. Okay, that is number 6.5. The value of letter S in this case. The value of letter S represents what? A selling price. So for brand to make a profit, he must increase the cost price by 60%. If he makes 60% profit, the profit can only be made from the cost price. So what we do, we must take this 1,250, we must increase it by 60%. After increasing it by 60%, that amount will be selling price. So we can calculate and say 60% of 1,250. 60% of 1,250 is 60 over 100 multiplied by 1,250. And if you take your calculator, 60 over 100 multiplied by 1,250, then I get 750. Okay, 750 is a profit. Therefore, the selling price, which is the value of S, the value of letter S in this case, it's 1,250 plus 750. 1,250 plus 750. Okay, then if I add this together, then I get 2,000. Okay, I get exactly 2,000 rand. Okay, so that was question 6.5. Boys and girls, we still had, or we still have one more question, but unfortunately, time is not on our side. But we managed to cover most of the questions that we have prepared for today. So this will bring us to the end of our lesson. And thank you very much for watching. And then I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.